Okay, let's open in a word of prayer this morning. Father, we thank you for this lovely day. Here in Central Ohio, we pray that you will bless our time together, that we will be able to sort of help people navigate some of the things that are going on in the world. Bless our time together today in Jesus' name, amen. Well, today I always look for a clever title, and sometimes I have really epiphanies that come to me in a moment. This time I checked Facebook Messenger, and a Facebook friend said, use this one, Un-prez-i-dent-ed. You get it? Un-prez-i-dent-ed. Do I have to go through it syllable by syllable for you? See, okay, I know you got it. So I don't know if I should identify him. Maybe I should, so he can get the hate mail this week. But it was an interesting week. I was sitting there the other day. Throughout the week, I'll start gathering things and putting them together. And I don't even remember if it was this week or last week, but there was a terrorist attack in Vienna. That was this week. Does it not seem like it was like a month and a half ago? I don't even have a slide for it because it's like so ancient history after everything else that went on. And I noticed the same thing last week. I was preparing something on Friday, and I thought there was another terrorist attack, and I started looking at it, and I thought the terrorist attack had occurred early on the week. It was the day before, because so many things had happened. And this is the way I think our world and culture and life is going to be now until the Lord returns. Things are going to happen very quickly, and then sometimes very slowly. So it was only 5 days ago that people were voting for the President of the United States. Some of them for the third or fourth time, it appears, but we'll talk a little bit about that, obviously. And I have to tell you that I get a lot of email messages, that type of thing, and I got a lot of messages this week that because of this convergence of events and the things that are going on, people are really stressed out. I got a number of emails from people who are literally suicidal. They don't think they can go on. And in some parts of the country, it's very stressful, where there is street violence and that sort of thing. And I don't know that that's going to change. It is a disrupted world. I will also say that people that I know are being deplatformed by the day on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, because we are in a truth, what I called a couple weeks ago, a truth lockdown. I don't expect that that's going to change either. So we are trying to put some things up at rtntv.org. I know sometimes there are technical issues there, and I apologize for that. Please understand that Google does this YouTube thing, which I think is great in many respects, but it also costs money. For example, Google is building a server farm down here about 12 miles south of the church that's going to cost somewhere around $600 to $700 million. We don't have $600 or $700 million. We're an all-volunteer staff at Remnant Truth. We don't charge anything. We don't make any money or anything like that. So please be patient with us, because it can get rather complicated, particularly when you're getting videos from a bunch of different sources and trying to compress them and make them still look good and that type of thing. And it only works here sometimes at FBC because we have a great staff of people to help to do things. All I have to do is prepare the talk. But in light of people being so stressed, I really struggled for what I should read in terms of scripture to start out today. I thought that maybe Imprecatory Psalms would be appropriate. In fact, I believe almost the majority of the Psalms have imprecatory language in them. And I think it's something that we at the church, we don't really talk too much about. So I'm going to read a passage today that I think does have some encouragement. And I'm going to read from the King James Version of Psalm chapter 37. And I'm going to read the whole thing. So it's 40 verses, and here we go. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. So in other words, we shouldn't be, look, they're getting power. Evil people are getting power. We know that prophetically this is promised. And it's like, well, why is this being allowed to happen? Why is this happening? And the Psalm says, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. Why? For they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. Cease from anger, and forsake wrath, and fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, though thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth him upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. The wicked have drawn out the sword, and have bent their bow, to cast down the poor and needy, and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous. The Lord knoweth the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. But the wicked shall perish, and the enemies of the Lord shall be as the fat of lambs. They shall consume, and to smoke shall they consume away. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again. Sounds like he wrote this, after watching America over the last how many years. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth with his hand. I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. Depart from evil, and do good, and dwell forevermore. For the Lord loveth judgment, and forsaketh not his saints. They are preserved forever, but the seed of the wicked shall be cut off. Are you starting to get the point? The righteous shall inherit the land, and dwell therein forever. The mouth of the righteous speaketh wisdom, and his tongue talketh of judgment. The law of God is in his heart, none of his steps shall slide. The wicked watcheth the righteous, and seeketh to slay him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand, nor condemn him when he is judged. Wait on the Lord, and keep his way, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it. I have seen the wicked in great power and spreading like a green bay tree. Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. Yea, I sought him, and he could not, but he could not be found. Mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together, the end of the wicked shall be cut off. But the salvation of the righteous is of the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble. And the Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them because they trust in him. So I would suggest that if you're having problems, and I get it, okay? It's a stressful time to be alive. And if you're having these problems, I would suggest you read the Psalms. Like a dozen, 15, 20, 25, 50 a day. And when you're done, repeat. And when you're done that time, repeat again and again and again, because they are a balm for the soul in many cases. And they discuss a lot of the, in ancient terms, we have this belief that the ancient people, like the people of Israel and like the disciples in the New Testament, they were just, they're just ignorant fishermen, I don't think so. I think they knew a lot more about the scriptures than any of us do. They knew a lot. And they weren't, it's a slam to call them ignorant. So today you might guess I'm going to take a look at the election, some of the things that are going on there. Maybe if I remember, if I get moving into the Middle East and I haven't talked about the timeline of what I think is going to happen, somebody yell timeline to remind me. I didn't have time to make up any slides. But I haven't got to the Middle East yet, so don't you dare speak too quickly. And then I have a bunch of stuff about the Middle East and the UN, which we may or may not get to, but I think some of the things going on with the election are very, that's what's causing people a lot of distress. The world may be on the verge of nuclear war or annihilation or something like that, but the election thing is really bugging us. And it bothers me too, because I want truth to prevail, and I see precious little of that going on. And I don't even know really where to begin. I saw this, I read a lot of newspapers around the world, at least the front pages, just because I like to see what other people are saying about us. This is from the West Australian, which I think was a good, that came from Wednesday. America on edge as voters today decide between Trump or Biden for U.S. president. Of course, their Wednesday, that was when they were writing that, we were just getting started with our election day. And what had happened, we had over 100 million people vote early. In some states, the number of people that voted early, like Texas, exceeded the number of people that voted in 2016 election. We also saw that there's a big shift that's been going on in the country. For example, a lot of people have moved out of California. I think a pastor friend of mine who left California and moved to Texas. He's one of the guys I trust that he can vote in Texas and still do the right thing. Vote for the best candidate. And I think he said, Pastor Chris said, look, if you're going to come to Texas and vote like you did in California, just go back. Don't ruin Texas like you did California. And I've spent a lot of time in California in my life, and I love California. It's a phenomenally beautiful state, great people in places, and a lot to do. I enjoy it. I have a lot of friends out there. But they've ruined the state. It's pretty clear. So a lot of gulping going on this week as we got into the election. So this is the San Francisco Chronicle on Friday, or yesterday. Waves of mail votes put Biden on the cusp of victory. And there was a very interesting thing that you saw. I apologize. I just did not have time to do all the graphics like I like to do this week because there was too much happening. But the one thing that I noticed was that as everybody went to bed in the early hours of Wednesday morning, Trump had a fair lead. And they were putting up vote totals, and the New York Times, I know everyone says you can't trust the New York Times, but they do a pretty good job with picking up the numbers from around the country, and they have some pretty good graphics. And on the New York Times website, they had these probability meters. So we'll go from low to high. And what happened was in a lot of these states, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, well, maybe not Arizona, Wisconsin, the Trump meter got up to like 88%. 88% probability that Trump will carry the state. And you remember it was the New York Times back in 2016 when they reported, they started out, Hillary had a 90% chance of winning the election. And you remember early in the morning on Wednesday morning, their probability meter, a little bit after midnight, hit about 51% Trump probability and eventually hit 95%. And that's when you saw the people like the left-wing crazy people like the Young Turks and everything, they started, it's panic time, it's panic time. Well, what I noticed this time was that as a lot of the probability meters for Trump got up, I had the website open, and I'll go to another page and I'll come back, all the probability meters except one or two disappeared. This was a massive propaganda situation. So as Trump got up and even with Biden on the electoral votes, once Biden got a bit of a lead on the electoral votes, did you notice what happened? For 4 days, that number was frozen. So that they were showing us that Trump had no chance, and they were trying to build into our minds what was going to happen yesterday when they all called the election for Biden. And they did. These are the headlines this morning. Biden defeats Trump's, Biden wins. Race is finally called after record turnout. Chaotic term ends with rare incumbent loss. Landmark ascent for Harris. I didn't see any of the phoenix rising from the ashes of Barack Obama, who will be, should this election result hold, he will be very active. Biden, I have to tell you, part of me feels bad for him that they're doing this to this guy when he should be at home, sitting in an easy chair and enjoying his last days. I mean, last night it was like, I don't know if you saw it. This is what I saw. They're having the victory speech, and his wife, Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, comes out, and Biden's there and everything, and she whispers something in the ear, and then he turns around smiling. And I know that she told him, you need to start smiling. Because I'm telling you, I do not think he is competent to be president. And when I say this, I don't want you to think that I think that President Trump was perfect either. There's what is pretty clear is that almost every president of the United States has been a highly flawed person in some respect. And you have to question this, anybody who thinks they can run this place. Anybody. That's sort of, they start off with me, it's sort of like, I'm not sure I trust you because you think you can actually do this. But, then in the London Times, it talked about that. Sleepy Joe wakes up America, the National and the United Arab Emirates. Biden wins the race. Here's this is Al-Quds Al-Arabi, published in London. This is what democracy looks like. In America, if you look through the headlines around the world, we're being mocked, and I'll talk a little bit about the various reactions around the world in a moment. This is a graphic I got out of the Financial Times. It is a interesting world. Here's a headline from the Wall Street Journal. Return to normalcy? Not on the streets of Philadelphia. Listen to this article. This was published yesterday. As the sun sets the night after the election, well, maybe it was the other day, I'm sorry. The streets around City Hall in Philadelphia feel like a dystopian street fair. I used to stay at a hotel actually right on the square there in the old Mellon Bank building. Illuminated by garish purple lights, leftist speakers lead rants and chants from the tricked out back of an old delivery truck. A marching band's drum section materializes, and inexplicably so does someone in an Elmo costume. Everyone is masked, no one is socially distanced, and everyone I speak to has a bleak outlook on life. The Philadelphia police bicycle by looking neutered compared with the National Guard, which stands a block away with rifles strapped across their chest. The capitalist sells Black Lives Matter swag. Most downtown shops have hung plywood to deter looters, painted over with the reassurances that they're still open. They look closed. It's a scene for either Tom Wolfe or Tom Waits. Cal Gobling takes it in quietly, 23 he is, and then comments in a flat voice, "Everything's effed up. I feel like I'm waiting for a lot of things to change. I feel like this being at a protest is doing something, and it feels good to be surrounded by people that are upset like me." In Philadelphia and other cities, radical leftists plan protests for November 4 regardless of the election outcome. Wednesday's demonstrations were peaceful here, but if you hoped a Biden presidency would bring tranquility to America's streets, forget it. No matter what goes down on Election Day, we will gather this Wednesday and every Wednesday until the fall of the regime, pronounced a flyer circulating in several cities. The self-described Rebel Alliance Network, CrimeThink.com, explained that if Biden wins, there will still be police, prisons, deportations, ecological destruction, capitalism. A Biden victory is not the end of this struggle. It is just the beginning of a new chapter. From the perspective, Democrats owe a debt for a Biden victory, and those in the streets intend to collect it. Unless the radical left wields the threat of unrest, I think if push comes to shove, the Democratic Party is going to let Trump and the right wing just roll right over them. One said this, "I approve of destruction where it makes a statement and sort of hurts the right people. Looting looks like a minor offense compared with police violence and the entire country being stolen from native people hundreds of years ago." Ms. Globig describes herself as a moderate. You get much further left voices here. I think I'm actually a little bit conservative compared to a lot of Philadelphians. That ought to scare you. There's a magazine out there that is called the Jacobin. Now, the Jacobins were progressive leftists in the French Revolution that eventually came to the fore, and over less than half a century, they beheaded hundreds of thousands of people, usually starting with other progressives that weren't left enough. And so I want to tell Biden and some of these others and all these people out celebrating is, listen, folks, if you think these leftists are not coming for you, you're naive. They're probably going to come for you first because you're not pure enough. In their religious hierarchy, you're a heretic. And that's what it is. This is I cut out the sound because this is Trump and leftists sort of confronting each other in Salem, Oregon yesterday. And I can't play the sound because there's a lot of F words. I have one where they put a guy down who was interfering with a police officer. They put him on the ground. He started yelling the F word. And then finally, call my mother. At the Jacobin website, it says this: the Trump era is over. Our leaders want to take us back to 2015. Where was the landslide Democrat-aligned pundits and pollsters alike had confidently suggested was coming? With signs of the promised blowout mysteriously absent, the high priest of cable news gradually seemed to settle on an answer. Sure, Trump might be ahead in key states across the Midwest, but this was precisely the outcome we'd all anticipated. Mail-in ballots were forthcoming after all, and they were likely to break for Biden. Suffice it to say, this election should have never been close, and things did not, to put it mildly, go according to plan. Though the final tally is yet to come, Trump has added millions of votes to his 2016 total. It was pretty stunning. Give or take a few thousand ballots in a handful of swing states, he'd now be on his way to a second term. There's nothing to say of the Democrats' catastrophic performance down ballot, which saw several GOP Senate incumbents swat down cash-soaked challengers. And did you see the money that was spent by the Democrats? To defeat Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, the Democrat challenger spent $100 million and lost by 12 points. In Kentucky, they tried to take out Mitch McConnell, and the Democratic challenger had $84 million to spend. She lost by 24 points. I view this as this is a stimulus package I'm fully on board with. This is fantastic. And you've soon checked, there was a number of races where the Democrats lost by 8 or more points and collectively spent $1 billion on the Senate races. Susan Collins, she's down by 10 points, 12 points. She won by 8. Her challenger spent, I think, $65 million in Maine, where they have, like 3 radio stations and some guy runs a TV station out of the back of his van. Maine's a beautiful state. I'm being a little bit facetious. I love Maine, by the way, I do. But it's largely rural. I drove through it once, and we drove for a couple hours, and we saw like 4 houses, you know? It's beautiful. It's stunning, but they spent a lot of money. They didn't get any results. In fact, there was I did an interview on Stand Up for the Truth with David Fiorazo on Thursday. You might look that up at standupforthetruth.com. And we talked about this, and one of the things I cited was this article that I found at, I think it was the American Project. And they talked about that there was this thing called Act Blue. Have you even heard of this? It's like a Democratic super PAC. They raised $3.5 billion for this election. And so this is where they make the claim, and my response to this is, hey, you know, I really was born at night, but not last night. They say that 51% of that came from unemployed blue-collar workers around the country and small contributions. I kind of get the impression that you're not buying it here. You shouldn't. It's a big fat lie. And there was a lot of money poured into this, way more than the Republicans had. The fat cat Republicans spent less. This is another article at the Jacobin. No honeymoon for Joe Biden. If there was ever a case before the victory of the lesser evil over the greater evil merited busting out a bottle or 2 of champagne, this was it. But once you've sobered up, remember that being less evil than Trump is fully compatible with being an implacable enemy of the working class. The incoming Joe Biden administration doesn't deserve an ounce of credit for having the right intentions or a day of progressives patiently waiting to see how it acts before pivoting to a posture of opposition. Part of me says, thanks, hey, oppose away. Go for it. I'm with you. There were a lot of reactions around the world. Welcome back. This is from the Washington Post this morning. America's allies celebrate Biden win and hope for a U.S. return to global politics. Biden announced one of the first things he's going to do, get back in the Paris Climate Accord. Get back in the deal with Iran. And as I've mentioned many times, he stood here a year ago in Columbus, Ohio, at the, what's that? They have the equal sign as their symbol. And said, the Equality Act, we're going to put that in. Well, the Equality Act will eviscerate religious liberties in the United States. That's what this man is about. This is the conservative Joe Biden compared to the leftist, who really want to tear everything down. The Gulf states hope for Trump's victory, officials say. Well, that didn't work out. Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted his congratulations this morning to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's Kamala, right? Not Kamala. Did I talk about this last week? Yeah. Kamala. She's up in Cleveland. Yeah, I'm Kamala Harris. When all the people on CNN are saying, if you say Kamala Harris, you're a racist. So anyway, so this is Netanyahu tweeting this, and then he also said this, congratulations and thank you, Donald Trump, for the friendship you have shown the state of Israel. China weighed in with a very mocking tweet from one of their foreign ministers. It quoted Trump tweet, and then they had like the crying eyes emoji. We're in strange territory. So first I'm going to play a little clip from a special report on Fox News with Kimberly Strassel. And I think what you're going to see is that there's this concern and focus that these mail-in ballots were really where all the loss occurred. Now, I'm not running the Trump legal team by any stretch of the imagination. I think the mail-in ballots are a bit of a distraction. And you saw the videos of when they were counting ballots in Detroit and Philadelphia in particular. In Philadelphia, they had an order from the judge that Republicans were allowed to observe. 2 minutes out of every hour they were allowed in to observe. In Detroit, as they tried to look through the windows, the workers were putting up pizza boxes. And you can find videos all over Twitter that every time a Republican, they would get a Republican out of the room for any reason. Like one guy adjusted his mask and they kicked him out. And when they kicked him out, all the other poll workers stood up and cheered. Standing ovation for him getting kicked out. Now, if you're not hiding something, why are you putting pizza boxes up over the windows? Why are you fighting in court to not have observers come in? And listen, it's not Trump who's litigating it. This has been litigated for months and months and months by the Democrats. They filed case after case after case to change the state laws on mail-in ballots. But I think in some respects, I think it's kind of a distraction. I'll tell you why. So first, Kimberly Strassel on special report.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we're nearing the end of the first part, and it's an important part. And you could well see those states come out with Biden ahead. You could well see some networks and newspapers even call for him. But in our system, the next part of this is that you have a canvassing process in which you all check out to make sure there were not clerical errors, to make sure all your tabulations are correct. You have legal challenges, and then you have a recount mechanism. And I think it's pretty clear at this point the Trump campaign is going to launch a lot of recount efforts. There are enough out there states that allow that to deny Joe Biden a certification until that process is done. And so buckle up, folks, because this takes a while. Like most states have at least 3 weeks to get through canvassing and then the recount. So we could be doing this for the next month. Well, obviously, the president is very disappointed in the way things are turning out. And I think what's really important that Republicans do here, and you're seeing more and more members of his party do it, that presidential statement was a little closer to it as well, too, is to make the distinction. It's not good enough to go out and claim that, you know, ballots are being burnt in a garbage can out back if you don't have any evidence of that. But there's a very different question to mount legal challenges, to argue that certain categories of ballots, for instance, should not be counted because they weren't cast legally. That's a very different question. And so that seems to be where the legal team at least is headed in a lot of these states. Look at Nevada, for instance, and its question of residency. And so that's the important question. And will they succeed? We don't know, but we have a system for this and courts.
Well, so here's a little bit of the timeline. President Trump's team challenging results before the results have been certified is almost certain to get the case dismissed, because what the law requires is that you have to have a case or controversy to bring before the court. And the court will say, well, Mr. President Trump's legal team, have they certified the election results yet? So you don't even know if you're going to lose or not. So why are you even here? See you later, come back when all this is done. And so it's going to take several weeks. I was laughing about, they haven't called Alaska yet. It's like 61-38 or 68-31. Trump, 50% of the vote has been counted, but they can't call it because Alaska, it takes them a week or two to get all the ballots in from, you know, Chicken Creek and all the other places around. And, you know, I don't know if they have enough snow for the dog sleds and that type of thing this time of year. But they called Virginia. Virginia had 40% of the vote in. Trump was leading 60% to 40%, and they called it for Biden. It was like the first state called, I think, just about. Well, can't you really call Alaska now? But really, the election's not final. That's what the one thing you need to understand is the votes the counts have not been certified hardly anywhere. There will be recounts. There is no doubt that there's going to be a recount in Georgia at least. And Georgia may flip. I understand there are about 8,000 military ballots that haven't been counted down there yet. And there's the lead here, this is the other day, was 4,000. I think it's even lower than that now. But I continue to think that this mail-in ballot thing, while it's a problem, I think it's a bit of a distraction. So I'm going to play a little bit of a clip with Tom Fenton and Sidney Powell and Lou Dobbs the other night that I think will raise some issues that I think need to be discussed. This is about a 5-minute clip.
So let's start with this election process. We just heard from John Sullivan.
Now, Tom Fenton is head of Judicial Watch on your left, and on the right is Sidney Powell, who is a superb litigator, former U.S. attorney, prosecutor, and she's the attorney for General Flynn right now, in which the case is pending in front of Judge Emmett Sullivan, who is also issuing orders about the ballots and stuff like that. I guess he has time to do that, but he can't get to the Flynn case.
So let's start with this election process. We just heard from John Solomon that the FBI indeed is being diligent, is involved, and we all hope he is exactly right. Your thoughts first about the knowledge now that the Justice Department is involved in this review of the election.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. I think there are any number of things they need to investigate, including the likelihood that 3% of the vote total was changed in the pre-election voting ballots that were collected digitally by using the Hammer program and a software program called Scorecard. That would have amounted to a massive change in the vote that would have gone across the country and explains a lot of what we're seeing. In addition, they ran an algorithm to calculate votes they might need to come up with for Mr. Biden in specific areas. I think that explains what happened in Michigan, where the computer glitch resulted in a change of votes of about 5,500 in favor of President Trump, just in one of 47 districts. All those districts need to be checked for that same, quote, software glitch, end quote, that would change the result in Michigan dramatically. The same thing is happening in other states. We've had hundreds of thousands of ballots mysteriously appear solely for Mr. Biden, which is statistically impossible as a matter of mathematics. It can all be documented. We are putting it into materials that we will file in federal court, and we need to seek relief in multiple states to enjoin the certification of any election results.
Tom Fitton, as you listen to Sydney, that sounds like a strong case for a straightforward allegation of fraud. The two programs that she just mentioned, I'm going to ask you right now, have you ever heard of them? Because I had not heard of them.
No, I mean, there have been noises about it on the internet, but I don't know anything beyond what Sydney's reporting now. I go back to the numbers you reported at the beginning of the segment. The president was winning on Tuesday.
Right.
He's not winning now. And he's not winning now as a result of a process that the voters can't have confidence in, the state legislatures can't have confidence in, in my view, the courts can't have confidence in. So the question is, are the courts going to undo what went on? I don't know. But the state legislatures in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, perhaps Arizona, they now have an opportunity to make a stand on behalf of the rule of law. Are they going to endorse what went on this week, or are they going to appoint a clean slate of electors that supports President Trump? That could be the next battle. And I would think that activists interested in this issue, and if you're concerned watching this, start talking to your state legislators. And I started asking where Congress is, because Congress in the end is going to be the judge of the electoral college votes. And if I were in Congress, I'd be telling these states, you better keep up on, you better be honest here, because we're not going to accept your votes if your election is a sham.
Well, Cindy, let's go back to Hammer and Scorecard. Are those the names that you just used for those programs? What's being done about it, and how broadly were they used by vote counters in various states?
I think they were very broadly used, but not by the vote counters. They were used by the forces in the Democratic operatives that had access to these programs through the government access points that they have, and used it illegally to change votes in this country. It's got to be investigated, probably by the president's most trusted military intelligence officials who can get into the system and see what was done. But we do have some evidence that that is exactly what happened. And they've used it against other entities in other countries. It's just been turned recently against our own citizens here to change election results. It's absolutely appalling that that can be done. And whether it's called computer glitches or something else, somebody has actually gone into the system and changed voting results.
That's called intervention in our elections, irrespective of, I guess if they were Russia or China, we'd refer to them as meddling. But it's intervention, and it's also crooked as hell, rigging this election in no matter the jurisdiction, whether it's Michigan, Georgia, wherever it might be. What can we do about it? Because the Department of Justice, I mean, if there's evidence of that program, why not just turn it over to the Justice Department and say, and go to the courts and say, this has got to stop now. Here is the way in which it was done.
Well, we've been trying to get their attention, and we're going to try even harder, and we'll have to put it in a federal lawsuit, apparently, and get as much of it out as we possibly can. We have some excellent witnesses on the issue. But this is coup 5.0, Lou. I mean, there was no reason to think that the Democratic operatives who spent hundreds of millions of dollars creating the Russia hoax, the Steele dossier, taking us through a special counsel operation for 2 years, trying an impeachment hoax, the apocalypse hoax, the obstruction hoax, wouldn't go so far as to create every means of voter fraud they could come up with to steal this election. That's exactly what happens. The president must fight back now in every way, shape, or form. We cannot let this republic be stolen by the Democratic operatives who want to destroy the republic and make it a socialist country where they continue to line their pockets with these backdoor global deals like the Biden laptop from hell exposes.
I think you're exactly right about that not happening. Let's turn, Tom Fitton, you've pointed out in our discussions that these legislatures are Republican controlled. Who can take that message to them, and precisely how likely is it that they would be receptive to a clean slate of electors who would represent, say, the state of Pennsylvania? That's a Republican legislature, and stand up for the integrity of elections and support the president.
Well, the focus from the media and activists and regular voters and citizens need to be brought to bear here. Certainly the information we're learning from campaign activists on the ground, independent journalists like John Solomon, the work of Judicial Watch should also be brought to bear. I mean, we knew going into this election in Pennsylvania, Lou, there were 800,000 extra names in the rolls in Pennsylvania. Nevada County has 154,000 inactive names on the rolls. Clark County, Nevada, I mean. So we've got this problem of dirty election rolls, mailing and balloting being allowed to draw from them.
And apparently a Republican Party that doesn't demand that those rolls be cleaned up. I mean, that's crazy. Could you put up that graphic again, please, folks? I want everybody to see what they're looking at, because this is really very important, what Tom's talking about. The control of both chambers of the legislature in these states that are critical right now in deciding who the next president will be: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. They must play a role in this to preserve the integrity, just as Tom Fitton is urging. And Sidney Powell, what you're breaking here tonight is extraordinary as well.
So look, I talked to Politico Friday downtown, and I said in Ohio, every state office, and I don't even know what happened in the Supreme Court races. Did the two Republicans win? Kennedy and just one won? Bruner didn't win, did she? Oh no. Oh no. Please don't tell me that. Now I'm distraught. I don't even know if I can. I'm going to have to retire now. She couldn't have won. Oh no. That's a disaster. Listen, I've had some stuff in front of her when she was on the Common Pleas bench. And this podium would rule better and understand better. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So, I never get a case to the Ohio Supreme Court anyway, but goodness gracious. Now I'm really depressed. What was that? Psalm 37, is that what I read? Oh my. So, Sidney Powell is right. So I'll make one thing is, if this is overturned and Trump gets reelected, my vote is Sidney Powell for Attorney General of the United States. And have anybody been through the milk aisle at the grocery store recently? Did anybody see Bill Barr's picture on a milk carton? Where is this guy? And that's what I asked this Politico guy. I said, we don't like what DeWine's doing on all this stuff. And he says, John, I talk to Republican legislators all the time. Man, what DeWine's out of control. You have the majority. You have a veto-proof majority in both houses and both branches of the Ohio State Legislature. Will you just do something, for crying out loud? They're not doing anything. And where's all the guys Mitt Romney had the audacity to speak out, oh, we'll accept everything, it's all over, and move on. Congratulations, Joe Biden. So look, there's a time to fight these things. So let's look at this. These are some interesting anomalies. So this is vote share over time in Pennsylvania and vote margin over time in Pennsylvania. And so the blue is Biden, the red is Trump. And this is, I don't know, this is from the Associated Press or New York Times or Washington Post. You can find these charts out there. But what do you see? You see this huge spike for Biden, don't you? On the bottom. I mean, maybe this one's a little bit better. This is Arizona and Nevada. And you see the spike. So what happened was that this is not, and I can't remember the name, that you can find Dexter Van Zyl, if his Twitter account is still up, he tweeted out an article of a statistical report, because they looked at elections in Iran like 10 years ago, and they say there's a certain curve that it follows. This is how they figured out something was wrong with Enron. There's a certain curve that's followed, but when you get this, something's seriously wrong with what's going on in the way statistics are being reported. And it's pretty well documented. So I went to bed 2:30, 3 o'clock Wednesday morning, and I woke up a few hours later, and all of a sudden, like 138,000 votes in Wisconsin, and I don't know, 150, 200,000 votes in Michigan had been added overnight when they said they were shutting down. So when they fired the machines up, all of a sudden, here's 138,000 votes in Wisconsin. Every single one for Joe Biden. It's not statistically possible. This is a miracle on the order of the virgin birth, the parting of the Red Sea. It's just not possible that this happens. Oh, here's a chart from Wisconsin and Michigan. And you see in here, you see in the middle, you see that spike for both of them. And I'm telling you, that spike happened in both states about 15 minutes apart, because I dug into the data. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Another anomaly was that Biden way outperformed down ballot races. So I'm just going to look at a few Senate races, okay? Because I want you to see this difference. So here's Michigan, and the line here is Joe Biden, Trump. That's the president, okay? This is with 99% of the vote in. Look at Biden. He has 2,794,000 votes. The Democratic incumbent has 2,722. That's a difference of 72,000 votes. Now, I am telling you, with a guy who never left his basement and had rallies with 10 people, maybe 6, maybe 2 at there, and most of them in cars when they came, that is statistically impossible for that to happen. That is, in my view, prima facie evidence of fraud, and somebody on the Trump legal team needs to be digging into that data. Because I'm concerned, I've been in front of judges, I just mentioned one. I would not want to take a computer-based case to that judge. She would not understand it. I'm just telling you. I'm going to be so upset the rest of the day. I wish I hadn't even asked okay, maybe I can go back in time and... Okay, but now look at the difference with Trump. 2,646. John James got 2,636. That's only 6,000 difference. That's kind of to be expected. That's only 6,000. That's a big difference than 72,000. How about Arizona? Here's Biden, 1,631,000. Mark Kelly actually got more. Here's the, let's see, is this Michigan again? Yeah, I already did the Michigan one, right? Well, anyway, so the but this, and there were one state, I think, where the difference was like 100,000. Biden got 100,000 more than the Senate candidate. It's not statistically possible. So I found a video somebody sent me, and it's on my Facebook page, and it's still up. It's on YouTube. I'm going to play a few-minute clip of it. This is a computer consultant who was called in because 29 states, including all of these states, use the same computer program, and they suspected fraud in Kentucky in 2018. So he's going to talk about what they found with this computer program. First, they said it was highly secure. He went in and they said they found like 10 to 20 backdoors where anybody could go in and do anything they want in the program. And it's just like, we had a guy on an iPhone in his car in a parking lot, and it took him less than 3 minutes to break into the system. Computer hacker. And so the security company, I can't remember the name, you can look on my Facebook page. I'll try to post a link to it. It's on YouTube. It's going around. So they were called in. So what happened in Kentucky in 2018 was the Republicans won all of the statewide races by huge margins, except governor, where they lost by 11,000 votes. So the people in Kentucky were concerned is there something wrong? Does something happen here? And so they went in. So this is a little discussion that they had about what happened in Kentucky on this internet program the other day.
Proof of hacking in action. We were called in to look at Kentucky because of the results. The results in Kentucky were amazing. Every Republican at the top of the ticket won big. There were 1,428,000 votes cast, and every Republican won by a margin of 200,000 to 300,000 votes, except for the governor, Matt Bevin. And he loses by 5,000 votes. Now, this may sound familiar to you, and it is, because if you will recall, on election night, our current president was ahead in 5 key battleground states that have Democrat governors, and he was ahead comfortably in all of them. And suddenly, all 5 states quit counting at the same time and went offline for 3 hours. And when they came online, suddenly, massive numbers of votes. In the case of 3 states, every single vote that was suddenly found in those 3 hours was for one candidate and one candidate only. Absolutely impossible. So this result looked really bad to everybody, and we went up there and we started doing an investigation. And the first thing we said was, now you realize your votes are with Clarity and they're being stored overseas. And they said, no, they're not. And we said, well, yeah, actually they are. Bring up the Kentucky State Board of Elections website on your computer, please. So they did. And we said, click on that link for the unofficial votes. And they did. And when they did, I said, look at that bar at the top of your screen. What's it say? They said, well, Clarity Elections. We said, yeah, you look like you're on the Kentucky State Board of Elections, but this site is Clarity. And they went, wow. And then I said, scroll down to the bottom. Who owns that page? Seidel. And that's when the discussion started. Now, this is some amazing video that you're seeing from CNN election night.
2018.
And I want to go back and show you a little bit about this clip. First, I want to explain what's happening in this clip. What's happening in this clip is this is the live feed from Clarity Elections coming through the Associated Desk or Decision Desk HQ. So this is the live feed. You're seeing the database that Clarity has as it gets updated with votes, okay? And right now, oh, and this little ribbon at the bottom, this is generated by CNN. And they update this a second after they get the update from Clarity up here. So let's just look. Right now, Andy Beshear, who is the guy that upset Matt Bevin, the governor at the time, Andy Beshear has 673,948 votes. That ties to what the ribbon from CNN says. Same thing with Matt Bevin, 662-235. 662-235. Now, let me take you through, and real quick, I'm going to run it again. You're going to see, if you're watching just this gold, you're going to see a flash update, and then this guy's face fills the page, and then I'm going to show you what you really missed. So here we go. Watch the gold. The update's coming. Boom, there it updates, and now here's this guy. Now let me show you what you missed. We're going to drag this back frame by frame. And so here we are before the update, and now I'm going to start walking you forward. Watch the gold. Here comes the update from Clarity. Boom. There it is. So now the update, Andy Beshear has 674,508 votes. And look down below, Andy Beshear had 673,948. They haven't had a chance to update the ribbon because this is in split seconds we're looking now. So Andy Beshear has just gained 560 votes. That makes sense. That's what happens as more votes come in, right? Let's look at Matt Bevin. He now has 661,675. But look down below. He did have 662,235 at the exact same second that Andy Beshear has gone up 560 votes. Matt Bevin has gone down 560 votes. This is vote switching in the computer. And by the way, between the 560 gain and 560 loss, you have just seen 25% of the loss amount of this race happen in front of your very eyes. We saw other things. We saw, for instance, that the tabulation software itself had problems. Let me explain what I mean by that. We first went in and we did a query of the database using...
Hey, Russ?
Yeah.
Just when you were showing that video, something happened with that. Coincidentally. Can you just repeat what you said after the 560 votes disappeared?
Yeah, you want me to go back there and show you that?
Well, we got through that, but then you started to say this is voter fraud, and you went down.
His
What you
internet
have
connection
just
went down when he
It's
said that.
560 votes added to Andy Beshear at the exact same second
An accident.
that 560 votes have been taken away from Matt Bevin. This is vote switching going on inside the computer. And that's 1,120 votes, which is about 25% of the entire loss margin you just saw happen before your eyes on election night from the Clarity Elections database. We also saw problems in the tabulation software. For instance, we have a query here that says we would like to see from the database all just the straight party ticket votes, and we would like to see them right here for the governor's race. And I started looking down and I saw precinct C148 and I saw undervotes. And I went, wow, that's kind of weird. How do you get an undervote if you pull the straight party ticket? Well, it turns out in Kentucky you can. But I didn't know that at the time. So I started looking and I mean, I spent hours looking at this. And eventually I went back and I reran the query, or I attempted to rerun the query, just to make sure that I hadn't gotten it wrong. But when I reran the query, I changed the order. Now, it shouldn't matter whether you ask for straight party tickets and the governor's race. It shouldn't matter if you ask for the governor's race and you then refine it by straight party ticket. But it did matter in this case. Same precinct, same number of votes cast, but all the undervotes have gone away. There are no undervotes now. All the undervotes have been awarded to Andy Beshear, and 20% of the Republican votes had been awarded to Andy Beshear. The tabulation software itself, if you know the right order, you can determine who wins. Now, for those of you who may not understand what an undervote is where you start voting down the ballot and you get to, say, the fourth or fifth race, and you just don't know either person and you don't want to vote it at all, and you skip that race. Well, that creates an undervote. It creates a blank space. And so, obviously, in the first one, 8 people skipped the race, but when you ask the query differently, it gives you those 8 votes to the Democrat. This is a problem. So, what are we doing and finding using cyber?
Okay, you can find that whole video. I would highly recommend that you listen to it. It's a bit geeky, but it's very, very informative. And this is the software that's used in all of those states where the Trump margin disappeared. Trump, well, it's still Governor Beshear. No, it's 2 years down the road. You can't, and this is the problem, okay? Because they know that the courts are going to say, we got to get everybody in place, we got to get this done. The inauguration is January 20th or 22nd. Got to get this done, got to get it done, got to get it done, got to get the cabinet in place, got to do all these things. But look, Al Gore's thing drug on for 37 days after the election. And now, that was just one state. That was in 5 states. So this is going to be very, very difficult. You know, I'm a realist. This is the very slim chance. This is just one issue of many. The lack of, not being monitored. And they'll say, well, they got the vote there. Just look at the ballot. Is it the ballot okay? Then it's fine. But they have affidavits now from people who are saying, I work in the postal office in Traverse City, Michigan, and my supervisor said we have all these ballots here that are coming in today. It's election day, or the day after election day. You need to go and stamp them that they were postmarked yesterday. Hand stamp them. And there are affidavits like that. That's just one place. So this is, look, my opinion is it's massive fraud on a scale. And so, but what you have is you have the chattering class, the media saying there's no evidence of fraud. And you could, I used to represent railroads and would have grade crossing accidents. And the guy would say, I didn't see the train. There was no train. You got hit by the train. It's 16 feet tall. When it goes by, the ground shakes. I didn't see it. It just came out of nowhere. No, I'm not kidding you. And these cases, I had a case with a young man who had quadriplegic, catastrophic injuries. And we're talking tens of millions of dollars of exposure. So what I did in that case was I called all the way up to the CEO of the railroad. And I said, I want the exact train configuration that was on the day that he got hit, in the order, with the cars. And this, bless his heart, the CEO said, yeah, and we went out and we videotaped it to show what the guy sitting in the car would have seen. I say that because we have a train wreck in our election process right now, and the media is going, what train? What wreck? I've never seen anything like this. It's a propaganda machine, and all these people out there marching and cheering this. If you look at what happened and you don't think there's a problem, you have a problem. I'm just telling you. And all this stuff that I've talked about all these years about postmodernism and feelings running everything. This is what happens, folks. This is what it happens with bad theology in the church. Everything gets run by feelings. And now everything's run by feelings and politics, and facts don't matter anymore. And this is a world in which I think an Antichrist can rise to power pretty quickly. Actually, I used to think it was like, man, he's going to have to be so clever and work so hard. He's not even going to break a sweat. If what I see is going, and this is happening all over the world, my friends. And the church is going along with a lot of it. By the way, let me just say this as a sidebar. I got a lot of emails this week about, well, what about all these people issuing prophecies? Mark Taylor and Kim Clement and Dana Coverstone and all these other people have all these prophecies. And Mark Taylor, I saw him the other day saying, Trump's going to win all this, going to be fine, 4 more years, more justices, everything's great. Okay, look, if that happens, I'll be happy. Right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but it could. I'm not discounting that. But somebody said, well, what do we do with all these prophecies? And my response is this. In the Bible, prophets were few and far between. They are proliferating on the internet like, I don't know, what's something like a mosquitoes breed. And I have a problem with that. And there's a story of Micaiah and Ahab, and I forget the king of Judah at the time. And remember, Ahab was, and the king of Judah goes, well, don't you have any other prophets, You know, because all these are giving me good news that everything's going to be great. 400 of them. And Ahab goes, yeah, I got this other guy. You can read about this in Kings. But he doesn't like me because he always gives me bad news. And then Micaiah comes and mocks him. So I've sort of used that as a guideline of the false prophets were 400, the true prophet was 1. So the 400 to 1 ratio of false prophets to true prophets is probably what it is, at least in any generation at any time. So I'm very skeptical. That's what I would say. I would say if you want to hear what the Lord's saying, you have a whole book of it. Open it up and read it. It's called the Bible. Because I hear some of these guys sometimes, they're going, the Lord told me, and I'm like, Lord I never get direct downloads, okay? And when I hear them, some part of and I'm not saying that this does not happen, okay? I'm not what you would call a cessationist. But I also know that any of the sign gifts were very unique, special purpose, and not the norm. And so, like, the person said, I'm like, well, I hear you saying that, but the Lord's telling me that you're a nut. So does that cancel them out? I don't know. But I'm concerned about it. And so here's an article from Holman Jenkins, publisher at the Wall Street Journal. Let the Trump revisionism begin. Whatever the final count, the media needs to rethink its picture of a popular and populist president. And Trump way overperformed in all kinds of different categories. Latinos, 30%. Blacks, 15, 18% voted for Trump, which a lot of the leftists are saying, well, that's just proof of racism, because he's got them on the plantation still. That's why they voted for him. But on the Latinos one, this is kind of interesting. So I read in the Wall Street Journal, and I turn over to the Washington Post. And here's this article. No, this is the New York Times this morning, by one of their editors. There is no Latino vote. I'm a Latino. I never heard of this. Okay. I only learned I was a Latina in recent years. I still don't know what it means. Please, somebody help this woman. This is a propaganda machine in full swing. And this is the result of the election. Listen, we know that this was coming. I played this back in January of 2018. George Soros at Davos.
Danger.
Okay.
Clearly, I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world, but I regard it as a purely temporary phenomenon that will disappear in 2020 or even sooner. I give President Trump credit for motivating his core supporters brilliantly, but for every core supporter, he has created a greater number of core opponents who are equally strongly motivated. That's why I expect a Democratic landslide in 2018.
Okay. But he didn't get the landslide this year, but they did get the big sort of crown jewel. AOC tweeted this the other day: is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future? I foresee decent probability of many deleted tweets, writings, photos in the future. Michael Simon tweeted this: yes, we are the Trump Accountability Project. So we had the Transition Integrity Project. Remember I talked about that, how they were going to drag Trump out of the White House because he's not going to leave. Every administration staffer, campaign staffer, bundler, lawyer who represented them, everyone. The Trump Accountability Project. Now, the TrumpRegistry.com, by the way, I went to check just to confirm that Michael Simon had said this, and I saw this was, oh, I'm sorry, his page does not exist. Now you say, well, now it comes up that his tweets are protected. So I sent him a follow request. I don't know if he hears this, he's not going to be letting me, what? Because, they have to, they're like, you shine the light and the cockroaches and they run for the cabinet. So so I went to the Wayback Machine, I put in the URL, and it says this is what they had up. Remember what they did. And then now they've changed the name to TrumpAccountability.net. Remember what they did. And so they're making a list. We should not allow the following groups of people to profit from their experience: those who elected them, those who staffed his government, those who funded him. They're doxing everybody. That means they're going to expose all these people. Caroline Glick has a good article over at Israel Hayom about where America now stands. She talks about all the problems. She goes through the history. You can get it at israelhayom.com, the English version. On Wednesday, Biden got a similar 120,000 vote boost during the night, and when the Republicans woke up on Wednesday morning, Trump's 4.7% lead had all but disappeared. Trump got none of the votes. Trump's filing lawsuits, but the votes have not been certified yet, so I don't think they're going to go anywhere until they do. And that makes the timeline very compressed because the electors are supposed to meet to vote for president. So each state selects electors. And I think in every state, except maybe Maine and Nebraska, all of the electors go to the winner. So if you win by 20 votes, you get all of the electors. In Nebraska, I think they have 5 electors, and I think 2 of them are going to vote for Biden, 3 for Trump. And in Maine, I'm not sure what the split is. It's a 2-1 split, I think. So, but that happens on December 14th. It might be able to be pushed back a little bit. So what are they going to do? So they get, let's say the vote certifications come in December 1st. Now you're down to 2 weeks to do something legally. So you're going to have to attack the certification of the votes. You're going to have to attack the elector slates. You might be able to get some of these Republicans to actually do what they're supposed to do and legislate something, because they're supposed to approve the electors and how they're reported to Congress. this is going to be a real mess. And then somebody throws in the question is, well, what happens if Joe Biden dies between now and December 14th? Or if he dies after the electors have met and selected him, and they open them in early January at Congress to vote for the president, but he's not around anymore. And all the Democrats who were yelling 25th Amendment with President Trump, they're going to be yelling at 25th Amendment with President Biden. We are in a real mess. And it is, I will say, it's very stressful. So go read Caroline Glick's article. See if I want to say here. As for Trump supporters, after being called chumps by Biden after watching the Democrat-run vote counts and big tech censorship of President Trump, Trump supporters will not trust the integrity of the process that brought Biden to the White House. And it's hard to imagine them taking it silently. Standing outside the Philadelphia courthouse Wednesday, Rudy Giuliani addressed both the media and Trump supporters. Looking at the reporters, he said, "Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?" Turning to Trump supporters, Giuliani added, "You know something? The Democrats do think you're stupid. They do think you're fools, and that's why you got called deplorable chumps. That's over." So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be very, very difficult. This is an education process that's gone on for a long time. Writing in the Wall Street Journal the other day, John Ellis says this: woke universities lead America to a primitive state. In this election season, it's almost impossible to find pro-Trump bumper stickers or signs anywhere in my town. He lives in Santa Cruz, California. Beautiful place. The reason is not lack of support, but fear of vandalism or worse. People nationwide have been physically assaulted and even threatened with the loss of their livelihoods for no other reason than they have planned to vote as one half of the country does, and political goals are now commonly pursued by violent means. And he's gone on to say that this wokeism and everything, this has been going on for a long time in our country. Race relations in America are devolving under the same progressive leadership. Campuses are in a constant state of hysteria about systemic racism, with small armies of diversity administrators always eager to jump at the slightest infraction, real or imagined. Why does invisible campus racism need such zealous policing? If radical leftists can persuade enough people that America is rotten at its core with racial prejudice, they'll gain traction for their program of radical social transformation. Power-hungry radicals whip up racial tensions where none exist because their authority depends on social division. In the past, universities were indispensable in maintaining American culture, but now they undermine and sicken it. The public should learn to see through the patina of prestige that still covers elite schools and should assess realistically the damage these schools are doing today. Their damage goes beyond the failure to develop graduates who think independently. Universities now attack the most basic principles of American society and do so with lavish taxpayer support. We should decide how best to cut them off. That's from a public university professor. And then this, I came across in researching the same thing. This is a Journal for Interdisciplinary Biblical Studies from Leeds University, I believe it is, in the UK. Look at the titles of the things that they're going to study. They have in their journal. Activism in the Biblical Studies Classroom, Global Perspectives. Introduction, Activism in Biblical Studies Classroom, on Becoming a Change Agent. Journeys of Teaching Gender and Health in an African Crisis Context. Gender, Sexuality in the Bible, Teaching for Social Justice. This is a Christian seminary, folks. This is why we talk about this at FBC all the time. Here's the syllabus for the Activism in Biblical Studies classroom. This is what's enveloped the universities. Melanie Phillips has a great article about electing a president in a volcanic culture war. I'm going to close with this. I have stacks of stuff on the Middle East, but maybe I'll do something in the middle of the week. I don't know. There's a lot going on. You need to pray about this. You need to take the advice of Psalm 37. You need to act in a godly manner. But that doesn't mean that you just, my personal view is that doesn't mean you just roll over. It's like the false prophets thing. The discussion that I saw in a Facebook group this morning was, well, people really get on the, they really crawl all over these guys and call them false prophets, and it's not very loving. We need to be loving people. Listen, it is love to tell someone that they're a false prophet and they're leading people to hell. That's love, my friends, not letting them get away with it. So we practice biblical love here, and sometimes biblical love has a pretty hard edge. And we're going to stand for that. You don't get to teach falsely and then say you should be acting with the love of God before you criticize me. You can criticize them in a loving way, but warning people is a loving act too. The U.S. presidential election, Melanie Phillips said, has illustrated more graphically than ever before that we are living beneath an erupting civilizational volcano. The flaming cultural lava is spreading well beyond America. We have to wonder whether we are now watching the steady asphyxiation in the West of both liberalism and democracy. Nowhere is waiting with greater apprehension for the eventual outcome of the election than Israel. Biden's going to react to activate the deal. She goes on and talks about all the things that Obama did that are going to be done again. Even deeper issues are at stake. This was illustrated by the remarkable sight on Tuesday of the Amish in Pennsylvania who normally don't vote at all, driving in a stream of horse-drawn buggies, flying the stars and stripes to cast their vote for Donald Trump. For these and other deeply conservative religious believers, Trump was the only thing standing between them and the collapse of the moral fabric of their society. And look, maybe this is God's plan, okay? And the church will go on, regardless of who the president is. We're going to be here, Paul went around. Paul wasn't necessarily the most loving guy either. He went to Mars Hill in Athens and he said, looked at their gods, remember? Everybody says, oh, he was so seeker sensitive. He was not seeker sensitive. He said, you have a statue to an unknown God. Well, I worship the known God, the one that you call unknown. I know who he is. And he says the times of ignorance are over. Stop being stupid, because the Son of God has revealed himself in a miraculous way in Israel. Melanie concludes this. She quotes a rabbi. Jacob Neusner famously wrote, civilization hangs suspended from generation to generation by the gossamer strand of memory. The West is divided into two worlds, those who are preserving that strand and those who are trying to snap it. And what we need to do as people of God and people of the book is to preserve those things. We need to be salt and light now more than ever. And that's the takeaway from today. Whether Trump is president or not is not going to change what we need to do. In fact, it may make it even more necessary. So, look, I have my personal preferences on a lot of things. I don't always get them. I will say this because I ran this by my wife and she laughed. So I was listening to Dennis Prager the other day and he quoted a famous philosopher. Somebody said, in the beginning, God made man and critic. Okay, so it rang true. It's the way things are. We live with aliens on both sides of the issue a lot of times. But listen, we are aliens in this world, and we need to stand up for what's right and be salt and light, and be people of prayer, people of the book. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. We pray that will be able to take these lessons to heart today and to do the right thing. Be people of love and truth and character and salt and light in an increasingly dark world. Give us the strength that we need. Give us the guidance of your Holy Spirit to engage people and share with them the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name, amen.